Hi guys, we're here at the Sony Europe headquarters and we had a first look at the new Sony a6500. The design of the 6500 is basically identical to that of the 6300. The only relevant upgrade is a more prominent grip on the 6500 that indeed feels more comfortable. Concerning the button layout, the only things to highlight are the extra custom button on top, the larger shutter release button, and the more textured exposure dial. Sony has finally listened to customer feedback and included a rear touchscreen, which can be used to change the focus point position. It doesn't matter which area mode you select since Touch AF can be activated at any time by simply touching the screen. If you press the control wheel center button, you disable the Touch AF point and go back to the setting you were using before. You can use the touchscreen when recording video as well. I found the new touchscreen precise and reliable. However, the single autofocus point displayed on the screen is difficult to see. It is thin and grey and you often need to hard press the shutter release button to lock the focus distance and see it as a green point for a few seconds. When composing with the electronic viewfinder, you can use the rear monitor as a touchpad to change the autofocus point. The performance is good, but there is a tiny lag. There is another improvement that many photographers were waiting for, a new menu system, although calling it new can be a little bit misleading. Personally, I'm not sure if I like it or not yet, but let's have a closer look. We still have 6 main sections, but the gear icon is gone and there are now 2 camera icons with the numbers 1 and 2. When you browse inside the section, each page displays a title on top to indicate what kind of settings there are. The page number has been moved to the right side. This should help you to understand if you are on the right page when looking for a specific setting. Before, you only had the page number as a reference. The first 2 sections, Camera 1 and Camera 2, are probably the ones that received the most updates, but we are mostly talking about a rearranged order. The camera menu 1 has 14 pages, while the second has 9 pages, so scrolling through the various settings is still time-consuming. I would have preferred a more radical redesign of the interface with more main sections or sub-main sections. It would be great to have all the settings related to image quality under a main section and another one for all the autofocus and drive settings, for example, without the need to scroll through additional pages. The a6500 shares the same sensor as the 6300, but with an important hardware upgrade. There is a new front-end LSI chip that allows the camera to have more buffer memory when shooting in continuous mode with the JPEG or RAW formats. I did a quick test first in JPEG extra fine, then in RAW, and indeed the results are very good, outperforming the 6300 by a long margin. Be aware that it can take a while for the camera to write the files to the memory card, and during that time you won't be able to access the menu or change any settings. Even more useful than shooting continuously until the buffer is full is the fact that the a6500 should allow you to take lots of short bursts one after the other without any delay between them. The new LSI chip should also improve the high ISO performance, but since we only saw a pre-production model and we couldn't bring home sample images, we'll have to wait for a final production unit to verify that. Then we have 5-axis stabilization, which is a first for a Sony APC camera. Sony developed a smaller shutter mechanism to make room for the 5-axis unit. It should provide 5 stops of compensation, is effective for video and works the same way as the mechanism found on the A7 Mark II series. The 6500 uses 5-axis with E-mount lenses that have electronic contacts, or 3-axis with adapted or native lenses that lack electronic communication. With E-mount lenses that feature optical stabilization, 3-axis are used on the sensor and 2-axis on the lens. This is also valid for adapted DSLR lenses. The new shutter unit has been tested for 200,000 cycles. The autofocus system remains unchanged. We have 425 phase and 165 contrast detection points with 4D focus technology and high-density tracking. My impression is that it has the same reactivity and speed of the 6300. The camera can shoot 4K up to 30 frames per second, and Sony included a new setting called Auto Power Off Temperature to address the overheating issue. If you set it too high, the camera will record for a longer period of time even if it gets warmer before interrupting the recording. So long story short, the a6500 is more tolerant of high temperatures, but overheating is not completely gone. According to Sony, you should be able to record two 29-minute clips one after the other before you encounter any problems. One question is, since this solution seems to be purely a software addition, will Sony implement it on the a6300 as well with a firmware update? Let's hope so. In Full HD, the new camera can record up to 120 frames per second. There is a new slow and quick mode where you can choose between 1 and 120 frames per second. The video file will be saved in quick or slow motion directly. Finally, concerning video, there is a new photo capture mode which is similar to 4K photo on Lumix cameras. You can save an 8-megapixel JPEG from a 4K video or a 2-megapixel frame from a Full HD clip. Sony also introduced new settings including priority set with auto white balance and two new metering modes. The a6500 definitely looks like the most powerful Sony APS-C camera yet, but its announcement was unexpected. Released only 8 months after the a6300, it does bring some welcome improvements, but the constant release of new cameras also creates confusion. The a6500 doesn't replace the previous model, so we now have an a6000 series with 3 cameras at 3 different prices. However, as the flagship model, I would have expected more improvements like a slightly larger body and battery, a dual SD card slot, an autofocus joystick and more dials to control exposure. The a6300 is a great camera, but from an ease of use point of view, there are many improvements needed and the a6500 only addresses a few of them.